Today is Tuesday, November 18th, and it is about 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, 8 o'clock in the morning. And I got a message from my brother that he had a dream that was very, very interesting, and I tell you why in a little bit. But I would like to read the dream. It's a very chaotic and catastrophic dream about judgment on America. Let me read. It says, in the dream I was at the kitchen washing a cup when all of a sudden I started to float and was taken up high enough to see the entirety of the USA. I then was taken to Manhattan, where I descended low enough to see many people walking in the streets and people in their office working. It was a normal day, everything was fine. All of a sudden I looked towards the ocean and saw a large missile coming out of the water in extreme high speed. I could see some people looking out the window, and instantaneously their eyes were melted. I was immediately taken to a higher altitude to see the impact of the missile. When it hit Manhattan, it was dead on. I could see a large ball of fire growing rapidly horizontally, and people were evaporating and the buildings melting. After that, I was taken to Florida. The city looked like it was Miami. I was taken this time to the beach and was floating very low, almost touching the sand. I could see many people at the beach. I could see the city, the beautiful buildings behind the people in the beach. I could also see people in their offices working, also just like in Manhattan. Again, just a normal day. But again, I saw a large missile coming out of the ocean extremely fast. And once again, as it came up, it came down on the beach, right where the water reached the dry sand and right in front of me. I was taken up again and could see a large ball of fire spreading horizontally and consuming everything. Since the missile hit the beach, that ball of fire went towards the ocean and destroyed many boats and large ships. I also saw a large wave push towards the ocean due to the explosion. Once again, I was taken to a very high altitude that I could see the entire USA in the Pacific Ocean. Out of the Pacific Ocean, 4 large missiles came out. They hit California, Washington, New Mexico, and Illinois. I saw the large balls of fire again, and they consumed everything. As these 4 missiles hit the areas, I mentioned that's when I heard a voice. The voice said to me, I'm showing these things because America's Judgment Day will be happening very soon. I'm going to destroy her, but the ones that are mine, I will spare their lives. Instantly, I was in the wilderness. I was no longer floating. I could see many trees and some clearance in the skies as well. Suddenly, a wall of fire came down, encircled the whole forest, and then a roof of fire came down and sealed us in there, protecting us from destruction. And that's how the dream ended. It's interesting that my brother sent this message to me, and then I was just with my wife sitting down, just hanging out, and I got the remote and went to Netflix, and I don't watch much TV or many movies at all, but I was just looking, scrolling, if you will. And there was a movie, I believe the name was The House of Dynamite. And I started watching a little bit. I didn't like the plot, or it was too slow in knowing a little bit of the military like I do. I didn't agree with certain things. But something very interesting about that movie was that there was a missile that was launched against the U.S. According to the movie, it was the 3rd one. 2 were just tests, and the missile came out of the Pacific and fell on the Pacific. But this 3rd missile that the movie talks about actually was a nuclear head and was going towards Chicago, and they couldn't stop it. So I didn't watch the whole movie. So I just forwarded to the end, and they didn't show the explosion, but they showed the complete desperation of people. And when I got first my brother's text about his dream, and then I saw that movie in a warhead, a nuclear warhead, hitting Chicago. Look, we all know the world feels extremely different, very different. Let's be ready. Let's be ready.
Alright, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakah Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect. Alright, the name of this lesson is, alright, a response to the elder, Elnat Zakba, a dream, of the judgment of America. Alright, and this video here is from the elder out there in South Carolina, Elder Matt Zakba. Please subscribe, subscribe to be edified. Alright, his main channel is GMS South Carolina 08, and also GMS Walk and Talk SC8. Alright, subscribe to be edified. Alright, so this guy, brother had a dream, about the judgment of America, and as he heard in the dream, alright, in his brother dream that he raised up, in the sky, and see this and see a portion of the USA, America, and people was working, in the building, everything was normal, until all of a sudden, a nuclear missile, just was coming out of the water at high speeds, which kind of reminds me of the Poseidon, Russia new weapon, but it's not a missile, it's a drone, a nuclear drone, but it kind of reminds me, but anyway, and the missile, was about, when it was about to hit its target, the people who was watching outside in the window, the eyes just started to dissolve. People were starting to evaporate in the building, I believe, which reminds me of this precept here. Let's get it. Yeah, this is the book of Zechariah, chapter 14, verse 12. It says, "And this shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh Hashem Yahushai will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth." Alright, that plague, is the nuclear destruction, of those missiles, alright? So that's what's gonna happen. Let's get another precept. This is Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 1. It says, "Thus saith Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise up against me, a destroying wind. All right. Okay, which is those are nuclear missiles, that gonna be that's the sweeping action, those mushroom clouds. All right, what gonna empty her land, sweep away everything. All right, verse 2, it says, and will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land, for in the day of trouble they shall be against her wrong about. All right, those missiles. Verse 3, against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up to in his brigandine, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host. All right, so those nuclear missiles are gonna destroy her utterly. All right, wipe out her land. That was gonna happen. All right, that's her judgment. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 13. Verse 19, and it says, and Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. Right, and you see what happened with Sodom and Gomorrah, how the Lord destroyed it utterly with fire. All right, from the chariots, that's how it's gonna be when the Lord destroy America, Babylon the Great, with nuclear fire. All right, verse 20, it says, it shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation, neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the sheepherds make their folds there, but wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be filled with doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there, and the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant places, and her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. All right, her days not going to be prolonged. All right, that's how America, Babylon the Great, gonna be after the Lord is done with her. All right, that's how it's gonna be. All right, and also another thing, and as we coming closer to the end, as you see people prophesying, the Lord giving people dreams, as you see with the guy brother dream, what he dreamed about America, brothers also, getting dreams, so the Lord is pouring out, his spirit upon all flesh. On all flesh, right? Let's get that precept. This is Acts chapter 2, verse 17. It says, and it shall come to pass in the last days, saith Yahweh, which is now, I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall dream, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Verse 18, and on my servants and on my handmaids I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy. All right, the Lord pouring out the spirit of prophecies. All right. Okay, you see that happening. All right. So let's get another precept. This is Revelation chapter 17 and start at verse 1. As you see the headline, the doom of Babylon. All right. Okay, the doom of Babylon. It says, and there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. All right, those other nations, all right, of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunken with the wine of her fornication. All right, all her abominations are filth. That's what she indoctrinate, the other nations. She made the nations mad. All right, let's jump down to verse 16. It says, And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. All right, that was gonna happen. All right, the beast is NATO and EU. All right, and 10 horns those are America allies, Germany and France, all these nations. They're gonna also, rise up against her, because also too they're seeing that the BRIC nations, Russia, all these nations are getting stronger than her. All right, so them gonna join forces and go up against her. All right, let's get a precept to back that up. This is Obadiah chapter 1, verse 7. It says, All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. All right, that was gonna happen. All right. Let's get this precept. This is Zephaniah chapter 1 and verse 15. It says, That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness and desolation, a day of clouds and gloominess, a day of a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness. All right, why it's gonna be a day of thick darkness? Because and clouds, because the mushroom clouds. All right, gonna sweep the land and cover the heavens. All right, okay. And also another thing where you said too about the voice, how like Lord was telling the guy telling him in the guy dream, in his brother dream, that how the Lord gonna protect his chosen ones. All right, which is the elect. All right, the 1/3. Let's just listen back to that. Just listen.
And they couldn't stop it. Like I do, hanging out. Only a wall of fire came down. Will be happening very soon.
Right.
That's when I heard a voice. The voice said to me, I'm showing these things because America's judgment day will be happening very soon. I'm going to destroy her. But the ones that are mine, I will spare their lives. Instantly, I was in the wilderness.
Right. Okay, that's the elect. All right. Let's get a precept. Slakia. Just auto rotate. Yeah, that's the elect. Okay. The last precept here. This is Isaiah chapter 26, verse 20. Slakia. Yeah. Therefore, verse 20, it says, Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself as it were over as it were for a little moment, until the indignation be overpassed. All right, the nuclear destruction. Right, the Lord gonna be taking up his elect into into those chariots. All right, So I hope this response was edifying. All right, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect. Wa Abad Babal Shalom.